Hi, this is Ford Saeks. Welcome to another episode of Fordify Live. And today's guest is Daniel Doulen, and he is with Wings and Rings. And I had an opportunity to speak at their conference, and I thought, who would be better than to help share some of the challenges that a QSR and fast casual and full service dining, what are the challenges that people go through? So Daniel, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you very much, Ford, for having me. I appreciate the time you're allowing me to speak with you today.
Well, first of all, tell our listeners, and we're going live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, and we've got promotions on Twitter. Tell us about your brand. If no one knows who your brand is, just kind of give me a summation of your brand right now.
So we are a sports restaurant. We are casual dining. What we do is we focus on the whole family. So we want to bring sports fans into our restaurant. We are definitely a restaurant that has a bar as opposed to a bar that sells food. Again, we want to be the place that the whole family can come in and connect around sports. We want to use sports as a backdrop as opposed to using sports as the main focus. We want to have that as a connection point for people to come into the restaurant so they can bring their family, they can bring their friends. They don't feel like they're in a bar scenario, a bar situation. So we're based in Cincinnati, Ohio. We actually have 62 locations here in the United States and about 85 locations worldwide now.
And so you've obviously experienced a lot of growth. How have your strategies changed over the past decade? I mean, obviously COVID threw a big wrench in everything as far as growth, but you've been with the company a long time now. Where do you feel, how have the strategies changed as it relates to growth and growing a franchise brand like yourself?
So I think you got to be careful through the tough times to not make drastic changes to the brand. If you're being successful and you're growing, our growth hasn't been, we haven't taken off like a rocket ship, but we've also had some nice, steady, slow growth through many different periods. I've been with the brand 15 years, like you said, I believe. And we've just seen a lot of changes. So one is you've got to kind of stay true to the core values that really made your brand what it is. It would be very easy to say, supply chain issues are horrible, construction costs are up. Let's stop doing a 5,000 square foot restaurant and let's go to a 2,000 square foot restaurant and call it an express. Well, what you're doing there, you're changing the whole brand. So what we've been able to do is adjust and adapt to the different changing times, really helping our franchisees prepare. Like through COVID, we had a weekly call. We helped them understand, okay, guess what? The restaurants are closing down. Now you're going to have to figure out off-premise dining. That's your only revenue at this point in time. So through COVID, we were on the phone all the time with them. The franchise business coaches were there for them if they had any questions whatsoever. But you've got to make those little changes and sometimes big changes to adapt. I will say that in 2019 and 2020, we went through a prototype change, and this was before COVID hit. And one thing that we were trying to do is reduce the initial investment for the franchisees.
Right.
And so we took a look. We brought in vendors, we brought in architects, general contractors, our food supplier, individuals here at the corporate office, and we got together. We had a couple sessions where we talked about ideas to bring the initial investment down. Not only the initial investment, but look at the long-term cost of like certain types of equipment, furniture, fixtures, flooring. What does the flooring need to look like? So that was actually what we called our Generation 4. Mm-hmm. And so we reduced the footprint from 6,000 to 5,000. And we were able to take a little bit of cost. We made sure the building was a simple, square building, rectangular building. So that kind of reduced the cost. We did some things like stained concrete floor instead of tile, saved a little money there. We looked at the framing of the building. We brought the framing inside and we attached the walls to the frame now instead of building that pole inside the wall.
Right.
That saved a little money. And that's an idea that came from the general contractor. So all these people coming together, part of that project beyond reducing the initial investment was where's business going to be 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? So we created the valet pickup, and very different for casual dining brands to have I wouldn't call it a drive-through. It is a pickup lane.
Right,
People
right.
order ahead of time and they're able to pick up the food without getting out of their car. So we thought that was a great idea. We had it in development and we opened our first location, the first G4 prototype location with that valet pickup during COVID. So
Right.
Of course, that was just something that, was a huge hit right off the bat, made everything much more efficient. Our franchisees were happy, and we've been able to implement a more effective, efficient process now for pickup and off-premise dining for our franchisees, and we're implementing that into remodels.
Yeah, it's really important, like you said, to stay true to the brand. And I have an opportunity to interview a lot of franchise brands, executives from different departments and so forth. Sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's director of marketing or franchise development. And it's inside and outside franchising. So if you're watching our episode today, even if you're not in franchising, the lessons are really to stay true to your brand and to make sure that you don't just, diversify can also be diversify, right? I mean, you can take an opportunity to change things just to change things, or to change too often without really knowing what the problems are. So staying true to the brand is really important, looking for ways to cut costs, but it's really all about the customer experience, right? Because all the marketing in the world won't overcome a bad customer experience. And so delivering, you can cut your costs on certain things and you can improve efficiencies, but that customer experience, like you're talking about for the valet, it adds frictionless service. So,
Yes.
How can you add value to the customer experience so that you become remarkable and more people are willing to, say, oh, we should go to Wings and Rings, right? Because and we've got a location here. We've actually have two, but one's on the east side of where I live. We actually have one. So when I had the opportunity to speak at your brand, I was able to actually go over there, and that was during COVID. So, they had part of the restaurant shut off. Everybody had to be 6 feet apart. And, the local franchisee was challenged to find enough staff that could actually,
Yes.
They had the great food, but they had supply chain issues getting the actual product in, and then margins are squeezed and everything else. So on a different note, you've been in franchising now for 15 years. What was it about franchising that really struck you and said, hey, I love this business? And not only Wings and Rings, but what about franchising did you like, or do you like?
So when I've always said that it's a little different today.
Right.
Many people don't start their career going, I'm going to get into franchise sales, or
Right.
like we call it franchise development. It's not something that traditionally has been taught like in a college course. It may be now. Like I say, I do see some programs out there talking about franchise development, franchise sales. In my situation, I was in the food industry, and I actually, my uncle had a grocery store, and I worked there when I was 15, and I worked through high school, and then went to college at Morehead State, stayed in the food industry. And when I was working at a small grocery store and butcher shop in Lexington, Kentucky, while I was going to Morehead State, they asked me if I wanted to get into the food sales business. So I was like, well, that sounds like a good opportunity. So when I graduated school, I started selling, and they asked me to open up the Cincinnati market for their brand. And that's how I met Wings and Rings and many other brands. And when I met Wings and Rings, it was prior to 2005 when the current ownership purchased the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I started in 2007. I saw what they were doing, and they grew this 5 unit chain to 13 pretty quickly. And I was like, wow, this is a really great concept. And I loved the people that were involved in the brand at that time. And so we were talking one time, and they approached me and said, "Hey, would you like to join our team? We're looking for someone to do our franchise sales." And I was like, "Well, I know nothing about franchise sales, but I
Right.
love your brand, and I'm passionate about your product, and I see you guys are growing, and I would love to join." So that's when I joined, back when in 2007, when we had about 13 locations, and haven't looked back. Franchising in general, franchising is just the type of business that I just think it's a good business model. It's being tested. Every day we continue to test Wings and Rings business model. We've got the brightest people, working with us. We outsource. We use our resources within the four walls here at the corporate office. So it's always a brand that you've got somebody looking out for you. You've got somebody finding the best vendors, the best product, testing the product for you, testing new menu items. So that is a great business model in itself. And then just franchising in general, I really feel like it's one of those businesses that no matter where you're from, no matter what your start is, there's so many stories about people coming to America. They
Yep.
have nothing. They start out, they're washing dishes for some fast food restaurant, and they move up into management, and then they have an opportunity to become a franchisee of the brand, and they take hold of it. And now they've got 200, chicken locations
Right.
or
Right.
different brands. There's just story after story after story about people who have just really started as an employee and worked their way into a multi-unit franchisee. And it's inspiring to see and hear all the different stories when you visit some of the conferences. It's really inspiring to be part of something that is much bigger than the single unit of just us and our
Right.
brand, but also just the franchise family in general, really working together to make the industry better. It's just at the IFA recently. So, of
Yep.
course, we all talked about some of the struggles we're having, and it's good to know that we're not the only ones having certain struggles, and just really talk about, how we're getting through those. This particular time, we're still feeling the ripples of COVID, and how we're
Yep.
getting through that. And it really feels like a family type atmosphere. We're working together to get through, and I'm sure in franchising, it's always come out the other side on a positive. So it's
Well,
just a
thank
great
you.
industry to be a part of.
It's a great industry, and for those of you listening, IFA is the International Franchise Association. I spoke there last week or 2 weeks ago in Vegas, and of course there was over 5,000 attendees of the conference, franchisees, franchisors, and suppliers of the industry. And one of the things, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I've had 17 different businesses inside and outside franchising. And what I really love about the franchise model, and there's all different types of businesses. I mean, you can get into franchising at a very low investment all the way up to, millions of dollars, depending upon your brand. But what I really like about it is that it's duplicatable and scalable, right? So that if you buy a business, you're not having to start from scratch and figure everything out. You're able to get into a system that actually has resources and a sales playbook and a model that you can follow. And that's one of the biggest things that, is a challenge between franchisors, the brand, and franchisees, is getting the franchisees to follow your systems and to take personal accountability for their own results. And it's really important that as a franchisee that you follow your systems and that you take responsibility for the local area marketing, the networking, the grassroots efforts, because the national brand can only build a brand from a national perspective. The local franchisee really has to take care of that. Now, when you look forward for Wings and Rings in the next year or two, what's your growth plan? Like, are you planning on growing multiple units, or where do you feel the goals are for Wings and Rings going forward?
So, like I said, we have 62 locations. We have four locations currently in construction, So I want to continue to, again, it's a slower growth
Yep.
than maybe some of the smaller investments might have. But what I really like about how we're growing is we are very strategic about our growth. When we
That's
first
smart.
started, there was a little bit of a shotgun approach. Well, you're excited, you're in the brand, and people from California want to grow the brand, and people from North Dakota, and so. And I think most brands do it. They get excited and they go, "Yeah, let's go to California. Let's go to Texas. Let's go to Florida." And so now what we're doing is we've really narrowed down those core markets and the target markets. And so we're continuing to try to grow in those markets, primary markets. Of course, if somebody comes to me in a market and they want to open 10 wings and rings in, let's say, Colorado, guess what? We're gonna talk to them. But the other thing that I like about our growth right now is most of our growth is coming from current franchisees opening additional locations.
Yep.
Some of those locations are uh, development rights agreements that they're continuing to move forward with, but many of them are new. So they've got one. They came in with one franchise agreement, single location. They like the model, they like the people, they like the brand and what it's doing for them, and they want to open up additional locations. So we're having both of those types of current franchisees open new locations. That's the majority of the growth. And at the same time, we've got a few multi-unit operators coming in from other brands that have, purchased development rights agreement, and they're starting to open some of those locations as well. So it's a mix, but mostly what I like is current franchisees continuing to grow with the brand. I think it speaks highly for the brand.
What do you feel is the characteristics that you look for in a franchisee? So obviously, one, obviously they have to have the financial means to be able to do it, but the money is not the only factor. In fact, it's the least factor in my opinion. But what do you feel are some characteristics that you look for to ensure, a new broom sweeps clean, you never know for sure, but what are some of the characteristics that you look for in a potential franchisee, not a multi-unit owner who's already got one, but one that may be considering becoming part of the Wings and Rings family?
So, beyond the normal criteria, I would say that there's an entrepreneurial spirit, but if you're too entrepreneurial, might not be a good fit for a franchise because we've got a system in place. So let's
Right.
say someone is coming in and they've got great ideas about how to open a business and how to, maybe different menu items, and they're excited about, hey, I got this pizza that I want to develop. Well, they may not be the best franchisee, but entrepreneurial to a point where they understand how to hire the right people and the right team. They understand what they don't necessarily have as their expertise, and they're able to bring those people on board. So hiring the right people, and then just being able to follow the system, like you said before. If you follow the system, you should be successful.
Right.
And you can usually tell for me, when I'm taking someone through the franchise process, if I'm struggling getting them to follow the process through the franchising process, maybe they might not be the best fit for the brand. So I think there's, again, like I say, the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Some people call it entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
They need that brand to help them go to the next level. They understand what who they need to hire to supplement their expertise. And then, again, just move forward with that in mind, that I'm going to follow the system. I'm going to listen to the brand. I'm going to bring my ideas to the brand, and hopefully, we as a brand will listen to those ideas that the franchisees have. Some of the best ideas have come from franchisees, but overall, following that system, I think, is what I would really consider very important for a franchisee.
It certainly is. I mean, when I first started in this business 34 years ago, Daniel, my title was business growth innovator, right? And I speak to franchises, I speak to corporations and associations, I put on public events, I speak on business growth, right? How do you expand your influence? How do you build your subscriber list? How do you get leads and how do you get sales and B2B and B2C? And when I started working more with franchises, they were like, we don't really want innovation. They were like, and so I changed it about 25 years ago to accelerator because they all want to grow. So accelerator worked, innovation not so good. Even they wanted innovation within their system. So that was a really key distinction. And then I also realized that the biggest challenge in franchising was the franchisor just wants the franchisee to follow the system. It's okay if they can come up with ideas, but they don't want to do a site visit and find out that they're selling ice cream, because they bought an ice cream machine and now they've changed the menu when that's not part of their system, right? I mean, it needs to be part of their system. Right. So someone who's going to follow the system and more importantly, take personal accountability for their own results, right? So yes, the franchisor needs to drive national awareness, but the franchisee really has to take accountability. And that's usually what I'm brought into when I speak in an organization like I did with Wings and Rings, is I become a third-party endorsement for your brand to echo the things that you're trying to get them to know, as well as to re-inspire them and inspire them to be recommitted to the brand, to do what they know they need to do, right? I mean, I recently spoke at an event, and what I tell people is, it's not what you know, it's how well you execute. So even if you've heard some of the concepts before, if you're part of a franchise brand or you're part of watching this show on Fordify Live, and this also becomes a podcast on the Business Growth Show. So if you're subscribing, you can go to any podcast platform, search for the Business Growth Show, and you can download episodes of other leaders in the past, not inside and outside of franchising. The reason I like to interview people from franchising is you get to hear from the real deal. I mean, it's okay they can hear from me, and they do in my keynote presentations, but it's also important to learn from people that are in the field that are doing it. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much for sharing. Any closing thoughts that you have for our listeners or viewers? We do go live on Fordify Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central. So Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Central on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. But so any closing thoughts you have for our listeners, any action steps you want them to know? Obviously, if they want to check out your brand, they can Google in their local location, Wings and Rings. Don't be confused with the other one, everybody. This is Wings and Rings, right?
Yeah, I think you touched on something that I would love to follow up on. I think you mentioned the marketing piece, and I think that's super important. Once they get open, the best franchisees are going to continue to market the brand, and there's just so many avenues that you can do that with. Everything digital and everything going on right now, you can definitely market the brand. And our most successful franchisees spend more than the minimal amount on marketing efforts. So I will say, I guess as a closing, we welcome anyone interested to give me a call. We will have a booth. I don't know if you go to the Multi-Unit Franchise Conference here coming up in a couple months. We will be there. So if you'd like to stop by and chat with us, that'd be great.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, and tell your team thank you. And that brings us to the conclusion of the Fordify Live session with Daniel Doulen from Wings and Rings. Bye, everybody.